Good morning. Good morning, people. Just getting my morning drink going. Okay, so good morning once again. Today is Monday, July 22nd, 2024. It's just about 6 a.m. on a beautiful day in Pahrump or Pahrump, just for posterity. I will, for posterity, I will see what the weather is like. 85 degrees right now. It was 97 last night at 10 o'clock. And it's going to get to 107 today. Temperature is going to get to 107 at 5 p.m., 4 p.m. And then by 10 p.m., it'll be 96. So it's 85 degrees right now. There you go, people. Good morning, Wadabebi. We are at SeaWorld. I am buffering. Boy, I didn't know that was still around. Okay, you're at SeaWorld or SeaWorld. Or you're going to see the world. People want to know. Okay, well, anyway, glad you're at SeaWorld. Glad you're making things happen, experiencing life. We'll watch later. Okay, groovy. That's a good idea. Love you too. Okay, enjoy your day. Here we are at Department of Career Services, where our goal is to help you on this journey through this transcendent life. This is Monday, week 2 in our neuroscience-oriented approach to success class. Not a psychology-oriented approach. This is a new neuroscience approach, meaning we look at what's going on in your brain. We don't just talk about behavior, motivations, feelings. We go down several levels of where do those things come from? How do they exist in us? So we're going to be talking about that today. Let's see if we got anything else on our hit parade. Advice from an 80-year-old. Be a good loser. Right. Why is that? Why should you be a good loser? Because in order to learn to win, you need to be able to lose. If you're not a good loser, is anyone going to want to play with you again? No. It's part of proper socialization. Jordan Peterson says if by the age of 4 you can't play with other kids, it's going to be really tough, probably almost impossible to do that. You have to be able to play with other kids. So that means you need to be a good loser. Now, having mentioned Jordan Peterson, that's a good segue into his short video down below. His little 2-minute thing, which is people who always win are probably playing the wrong game. They're not playing the correct game, the right game. They're playing the wrong game. Because if you always win, you're not really learning truth. What is truth, values, etc. Okay, so we're going to get more into that later. Let me give the disclaimer on what we're doing here. Okay, so again, this is Department of Career Services, where our goal is to help people on their journey through life. There are some premises that we start with. One is we have a transcendent soul. We're not talking about that today, but just for today, just believe that we have a transcendent soul. This is not all there is. This life of mostly suffering is not all there is. Number 2, what happens next is related to what happens now, how we behave now. What happens next after we die has a relationship to how we behave now. Number 3, Jesus was the creator incarnate. And John 14:6, did not mean me, I am the way, meaning me as a person. It meant the things that I'm telling you are the way. This is the example, not the sole source. So there are other people who throughout history have said the same thing to different people in different ways, but essentially it comes down to the same. So you could be Buddha, you could be any number of enlightened people, including those we don't even know of. It could be any number of enlightened people that are giving instruction either directly or indirectly by the way they act as to how to go from here to the best next thing. And as with Jesus, which I know better than Buddha or any of the other religions, philosophies, etc., it came down to basically love. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love one another as I have loved you. If you follow my commandments, you will be one with the Father and I. And so that's the essence of it. But on a day-to-day basis, how do you get through life on a day-to-day basis? Because if you just act with love to the wrong people, the consequences are going to be bad. So Monday through Friday, we focus on 4 areas of life. Good morning, Atticus, Von Atticus. We focus on 4 areas: physical, fitness and health; mental, always be learning; C, emotional. If you can't control your emotions, don't worry, somebody else will, and they'll probably take you out of the game. And then the most important part is the spiritual, what happens next. What happens next? We focus Saturday and Sunday exclusively to that. And that spiritual is peppered through the week, seasoning through the week, because at the end of the day, that's the important thing. Preparing us for what happens next, getting through this life in such a way that you can say, I ran the good race, I fought the good fight, etc. Or I ran the good fight and I fought the good race, whatever. You can put it that way. Okay, so week 2 overview. This is week 2 of 4. Week 2 of 4. Week number 2 of 4. Last week was introduction and orientation. This week is we call Inside My Skull-Sized Kingdom. In other words, where do all these feelings, emotions, things come from? Lived past, anticipated future, our personality, our ability to simulate. Where does all of that come from? Is it in our heart? It's pretty much the Egyptians believed. Is it in our pinky? Where is it? And what we know is it's in our brain. How do we know that? Because if we damage our brain, those things are impacted. If we damage our pinky, those things are not impacted. If we have a heart transplant, we don't lose our memories, we don't lose those things do not go away, or they're not gained from the person whose heart we got. If we have a mechanical heart, an artificial heart, we don't become artificial people in our brains. We know that. If you have a stroke, or you know somebody has a stroke, you know that. Somebody who's fried their brain, we know that. And so this week we're going to take a look at that in 3 areas. One is on the bottom level, we look at a certain type of brain cell called a neuron, but Yuval Harari calls them Noy-rons. So we look at Noy-rons. What are their purpose? And today's TED Talk is I Am My Connectome by Sebastian Song. Tomorrow we will look at neurotransmitters, chemicals in our brain. And then Wednesday we will look at a particular part of the brain right at the top of the brainstem called the RAS, the reticular activating system. So what are those three things? How do they work together? And then how can we use them to think about our best future in such a way that the things that we do on a daily basis lead us towards that goal, lead us towards that potential future. That's what we're going to be doing this week. So, Noy-rons. So, Maticus von Atticus, good morning. Good to see you here. Sophie is at SeaWorld buffering. She will watch later. The question is, are you there? The question, Maticus von Atticus, is, are you there? Or is your video just on, or did you leave after saying good morning and now you're actually doing something else? And let's say that is the case. Let's say it's certainly the case with Wadabebi. Is that bad or good? Well, I would say at the end of the day, it's probably good. It's good to have the routine of starting the podcast in the morning. Maticus is still there. Starting the routine, to have the routine every morning, whether you watch it or not. Just keep the routine going. This is the thing I do. And then we want to improve upon it. We want to actually watch it. We want to pay attention. Maybe we want to take notes. Maybe we want to do this. But we keep the routine and we build upon the routine versus do I feel like watching it today? Do I feel like watching it today? Because if you get it to be a habit, it doesn't impact your feelings. It's just an automatic thing you do, unconscious behavior. So you can get the most unpleasant things, and if it becomes unconscious behavior, it doesn't even impact your sense of is it good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, etc. So I would say just the simple fact of tuning in and zoning out is better than sometimes watching and tuning in versus not watching. Routine and then repetition leads to habit. Habit can be good or bad. Habit in itself is nothing. It's just unconscious behavior. The type of habit can be good or bad. And we want to all better habits. So the first habit, I turn on the podcast when it's live. It's close to 6 o'clock in the morning. I do that every day. It becomes part of my routine. It becomes a habit. Then it could be I log on to post comments or to look at the comments. Cool. And then it could be I contribute, but the consistency is what it makes the value, just like our worksheet. Okay, so we're 13 minutes in, talking about Noy-rons. Noy-rons are a particular type of neuron or cell in our brain. Sebastian Song describes them as looking like trees. So they have these branches, and on the branches are little nodes that will touch, not touch, but will almost touch another neuron, different neuron. And that gap is called a synapse. And in that synapse, what we'll learn is that, say, this neuron releases neurotransmitters, releases chemicals that are absorbed by this neuron. And you have a whole string of those, like hundreds or millions of them, I don't know. And those will lead to some kind of, let's say, memory. It could be muscle memory, playing the piano, shooting a basket, hitting a baseball, whatever. Or it could be memorizing things, could have a tap into your vocabulary. So I can be speaking right now. That is unconscious behavior. I'm not thinking about what I'm speaking. I'm thinking about what I'm trying to say. And that's more complex. But we can safely say all of that is stored in the neurons of our brain. In our brain. All of that stuff is stored in our neurons. And how do we know, Johnny? Well, if we damage the neurons, our ability to do those things goes away. Last Monday, we watched Dr. Daniel Amen talking about brain scans. Yes, Matt, I am aware that perjury is a crime. There we go. Off in the weeds again. Are you aware that bees can smell fear? Okay, so neurons look like trees, branches in our brain, and every neuron has about 10,000 of these little nodes. And how many neurons are in the brain? Well, the number used to be, thought it was to be 100 billion. And then a professor, Susanna Herculano, figured out a way to accurately and easily count them by dissolving the brain in detergent and mixing it thoroughly, then taking a small amount of fluid out and counting it, and then doing the math. If there's this many neurons in a drop, let's say, then there's this many neurons in 5 gallons. And just simply doing the math. If you know how many drops are in 5,000 and in 5 gallons, then you can easily figure out how many neurons were in that brain that you dissolved. Pretty good, pretty clever, and she's done that for, I don't know, maybe hundreds of brains, of different types of brains. So, neurons, what is stored in our neurons? Our lived past, our memories, our anticipated future, our ability to simulate, our personality, things like that. Once again, how do we know? Because if we damage our brain, those things go away. And as I was starting to talk about last week, we watched Dr. Daniel Amen talking about brain scans and brain damage and how easy it is to damage our brain because it's the consistency of soft butter, but the inside of our skull has a lot of bony ridges. So if you bang your head, like you get a traumatic brain injury, you will destroy brain cells. So he talked about 5 ways to damage your brain. So 5 ways to damage neurons. Traumatic brain injury, drugs, alcohol, something growing on your brain, like a cyst or cancer or something. And then the 5th thing would be some kind of disease like Alzheimer's that is sort of, with that one in effect, it appears that it has a protein that's clogging up, that gets on the neurons, a sticky thing, and they don't operate properly. So, stroke would be a traumatic brain injury, right? You have a broken blood vessel, blood is leaking inside of your skull. All righty then. So, neurons, very important, and what you store in your neurons is thus important. If you store garbage, gigo, garbage in, garbage out. If instead of doing things, watching things that are uplifting, you're doing dark, negative things, why would you expect your life to be other than dark? Because that's what you're inputting into your brain. That's what you're processing. As your brain is solving problems, it's focused on that. But we're 18 minutes and 35 seconds in. Atticus Von Atticus, I have class tonight. So tonight could be ice cream night. Sort of depends upon you guys, because I'm not going to remind you. You kind of need to remind me or suggest to me that you want to do it. Bees and wasps communicate with pheromones. Okay, right. And then you wonder why your life is as it is versus when you're taking videos of puppies and kittens. So we're going to say Auf Wiedersehen, people. We're going to say hasta la vista.